predict these things.
Makhachev Orolbai takes on Jeremiah Wells this Saturday as the first fight of UFC 330. And this is a good fight. This is a good a matchup to start off the night. Makhachev Orolbai, always been very high on him. I think that he's very talented, very good prospect in the game. You got Jeremiah Wells, who jiu-jitsu black belt, power on the feet, decent grappler, decent wrestling, but getting up there in age, hasn't been the most impressive guy, in my opinion, hasn't been the most active either. Two fights in the last 3 years, recently kind of squeaking by a win over Timba Garembo, lost to Max Griffin by split decision before that, got choked out by Carlson Harris in a fight that he was clearly winning, and then fumbled it at the end. Taking on Makhachev Orolbai, who's just an absolute monster, absolute marauder, cardio for days, great grappling, great physicality, big for the division, power in the hands as well. Recently had a TKO KO over Jack Hermanson, had the quick finish over Tafik Musayev, and Musayev's debut, I think it was in Azerbaijan, but made pretty easy work of him, which is a good feather in his cap considering how Musayev's looked in the past. His only loss in the UFC was to Mateusz Rąbecki, who again, record doesn't show, but Rąbecki's he's a dangerous guy, you know, very well rounded, but he can be beat. Very close fight. You could say that you could argue Makhachev Orolbai won the fight, but no shame in that loss. Recently had kind of a lackluster performance against Chris Curtis, just really leaning on the wrestling advantage in that one, but I think that he's going to be better everywhere in this one. Going to be younger. I think he's going to hit a little bit harder. He's a little bit cleaner, a little bit more technical, a little bit better defense on the feet, whereas Jeremiah Wells, if he lands, he's putting you out, but he's throwing big right hands, big hooks. He's there to be taken down. He can be out grappled, doesn't make the best decisions on the ground as well. So I think that Orolbai, younger guy, he's going to be able to push a high pace even into the third round. I think he's going to be the better, stronger grappler. I think he's going to be a little bit more technical on the feet. He's got more finishing potential, fought the better guys, has looked better, been more active as well. So going to go with Orolbai. Should get this one done pretty convincingly, minus 600, huge favorite. I think those odds are correct. Think about becoming a member. It's $2.99 or $5.99 a month if you're feeling crazy. Really helps to support the channel. You'll get a full card breakdown video where I'll run through all my picks pretty rapid fire, and also a members only post where I run through all of my DraftKings picks. Appreciate you guys' support. Back to the video. So next up, you got Neil Magny versus Ramiz Brahimaj. You got Neil Magny, old man Magny, looking to fraud check another young guy, 39 years old, just turned 39. Tons of experience, no real glaring gaps anywhere. I mean, you could argue maybe on the feet, maybe his chin, maybe his chin's starting to kind of catch up to him at 39 years old, taking on something like Ramiz Brahimaj, whose striking is ever improving. He's been putting guys out, but he's got a nasty choke game, good grappling. And so I think this one is very even. I was initially leaning Ramiz Brahimaj, but again, at the end of the day, Ramiz Brahimaj, he's had some decent wins. Austin Vanderford was beating him before he wasn't. Choked out Billy Ray Goff, who's just making low IQ decisions. Beats Mickey Gall. You know, not a lot of wins to write home about. Losing to Timba Garembo, Court McGee, recently got out wrestled by Punhel Soriano, and I think that Neil Magny, using the old man strength, the craftiness, the experience, he's dealt with guys like Ramiz Brahimaj before. He's not really bringing anything that he hasn't seen before. He recently did lose to Yaroslav Amosov pretty easily, but Amosov's very high level. One of the best guys in the world. He's dangerous if he can get you to the ground. And I trust Neil Magny. I trust his wrestling, his grappling, his ability to continue to bring it for 3 hard rounds. And I think that if he can withstand Ramiz Brahimaj on the feet, his initial takedown game and offensive wrestling in the first round, I think that he can take over as this fight progresses, keep his chin tucked, not really take any big shots, and just win the scrambles, win the transitions on the ground, and get this one done by decision. So I'm going to go with Neil Magny to get this one done. This is a very even fight, but Ramiz Brahimaj, he's had some, moments of brilliance, you could say, against Vanderford, Billy Ray Goff, but you got to look at the level of competition. But then Ramiz Brahimaj, he loses to Punahele Soriano, who is still, I would say, mid-tier, similar to a Neil Magny, and I think that Neil Magny would beat Punhele Soriano pound for pound, age for age, if they were, within the same ages. So I'm gonna go with Neil Magny to get this one done as the crafty vet. Moving on, we got Rafael Tobias versus Lucas Fernando. So Rafael Tobias, supposed to be this big scary dude coming into the UFC, recently lost to DR Nergozai. We just couldn't get anything going. He had some good grappling. He had some moments on the ground. He had a Sualof stretch completely locked in as the fight ended. He would have more than likely got the submission if there would have been 5 or 10 seconds left, but I feel like there's too big of a gap on the feet here. If he can get guys to the ground, he's dangerous. But if he's left on the feet and you're able to stuff his takedowns and kind of pick him apart, you can win. And I think that's what Lucas Fernando is going to do in this one. Fernando is 6'3" with an 81-inch reach, so he's going to be an inch taller, but he's going to have like a 7-inch reach advantage over Rafael Tobias. And I think that he's the much better striker as well. He's looked really good in his last few fights. He had several, high-level wins over Philip Letu, Leon Soares over in LFA. Lost to Osmat Bakoa back in the day in LFA. Granted, you can take that loss however you want. lost to Cesar Almeida, who is very good on Dana White's Contender Series. So I'm going to go with Lucas Fernando. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded, going to have the size, the reach advantage. I just think he's the drastically better striker. And we saw DR Nurgazai, who I don't think is the best striker in the world, have a lot of success against Rafael Tobias last time out. So going to go with Lucas Fernando. 4-fight winning streaks, got the momentum, going to be the longer, bigger guy, young, 29, just entering his prime. Don't trust Rafael Tobias to be able to get this one to the ground and find a submission or control or find a big overhand right on the feet. So going to go with Lucas Fernando to get this one done. I think he can get it done by TKO, but more than likely just outpoints him, beats him from a volume perspective, and gets the decision. Moving on, we got Vicente Luque versus Tresean Gore. This is a weird fight. Vicente Luque goes through these periods in his career where it's like you think he's coming back and then he falls off again, and you think he's coming back and then he falls off again. Got TKO by Joaquin Buckley, where just kind of gave up. I feel like that was kind of the end for him. Then came back and had the quick submission win over Timba Garembo after dropping him, but again, that's Timba Garembo. I don't think we really value that win. Looked bad against Kevin Holland, was getting hurt. Joel Alvarez just beat on him. I feel like Joel Alvarez let him off the hook and didn't go for the finish. And then he comes back and again, club and subs Kelvin Gastelum and gets the win. And he's taking on Tresean Gore, who again, hasn't had the most success. He's been kind of up and down, taking a lot of damage, looked awful on the feet against Rodolfo Vieira, getting picked apart by that guy was not a good look, but then he came back, showed a lot of heart against Azamat Bakoyev to get the win. But I've got to look at this holistically, and I think that Vicente Luque is the more well-rounded guy, the better experience, and I trust him to find the chin at Tresean Gore or get him in a scramble, find a choke, something like that. I just don't see Tresean Gore bullying his way into a win against Vicente Luque. I think that he can land a right hand. I think that he can defend takedowns, so I think that Vicente Luque, his chin is suspect. I think he can get caught here, but I just think Vicente Luque is a little bit more crafty on the feet, a little bit more technical. Shots are a little bit straighter. He's got more weapons. He's got good defense standing for the most part, and he's always got that anaconda choke, that Darce choke, that front choke series. He's very high level wherever the fight goes. The only question is kind of where does he stand in terms of the damage that he's taken, the wear and tear, his chin. He is only 34 years old, and Tresean Gore did look like he's been making improvements as of his last fight, but I've seen him just get kind of beat on and not have the best level of performances, and it's hard for me to trust him to come in there and look as good and as consistent as he needs to be to beat somebody like Vicente Luque. So I'm going to go with Luque. I think he gets this one done by finish. Luque it's evens, plus 110. Tresean Gore is minus 135, slight favorite. But I'm going to go with my boy Vicente Luque to get this one done. Moving on, we got Donte Johnson versus Eric McConico. Donte Johnson had kind of a stinker his last time out against Cody Brundage. But again, Cody Brundage, tough dude for the most part. Can take a shot, can land some shots. He's got good wrestling. Another one of those pretty inconsistent guys, but he's not an easy night out for anybody. And Donte Johnson went to a split decision win. I don't think it should have been a split. I think that he should have got the unanimous decision. Before that, beats Cedricus Dumas. So it's like Donte Johnson's this high-level prospect, very athletic. He's got power, good grappling for the most part. A lot of momentum heading into this one. 8-0, undefeated, young dude, only 27 years old, but he hasn't really been tested. And Eric McConico has. He recently had that fight with Rodolfo Vieira, where he put on a very good performance to get the win. Got knocked out by Baisangar Susarkayev. I think he took that one on short notice, but I don't think Susarkayev is the guy that we think he is. Had a really close win with Cody Brundage. Again, Cody Brundage making it close, but got put out by Ruzabov. Maybe he took that one on short notice. I can't remember. But McConico, he's decent on the feet. He's athletic. He can defend some takedowns, but I just don't think he really has that it factor or anything that he does incredibly well. And I think that Donte Johnson's going to find his chin. He's going to get on the gas early and put a pace on him and eventually break him. So I'm going to go with Donte Johnson. I think he's got a lot of potential. Again, Eric McConico has the experience advantage, but I think that Donte Johnson, his youth, the way that he's looked in the past, and I think that his upside is much higher than Eric McConico, where I think Eric McConico's kind of plateaued in his career and his skills and kind of what we're going to see from him. Whereas Donte Johnson, I think that he's going to be making rapid improvements every time we see him. And the fact that he went to a close decision with Cody Brundage in his 8th pro fight, 2nd fight in the UFC, no shame in that. So I'm going to go Donte Johnson. I think he gets this one done by KO on the feet or gets some takedowns and gets a ground and pound TKO. Moving on, we got Charles Johnson versus Eduardo Henrique. So Johnson was supposed to be fighting Jose Ochoa, who had to pull out. Charles Johnson should be thanking the universe that happened, because I think that Jose Ochoa was going to put him out cold. But now he's taking on Eduardo Henrique, who's got some decent experience. He's taken this fight on short notice. He hasn't fought since September of last year, so he's been out for almost a year. Coming off of Dana White's Contender Series, we had a good performance, went to a decision, but outside of that, very well-rounded. He's got power on the feet, good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu ability. He did lose to Joseph Morales on The Ultimate Fighter about a year and a half ago, which no shame in that loss. Joseph Morales is very good, but outside of that, losing to Davi Bittencourt in LFA. Davi Bittencourt's very good, so no shame in those losses. I think that he is a very good prospect, 15-2, but taking a fight against a crafty guy in Charles Johnson on short notice, It's just hard for me to pick him. And the odds aren't out yet. I know that Charles Johnson was a pretty big underdog in his last fight, but in this one against Eduardo Henrique, it might be close because Eduardo Henrique is good. And Charles Johnson has been on kind of the decline. Recently had that fight with Asu Almabayev, who was just able to use the wrestling. I think he got him down like 6 times, ended up getting a Suloev stretch, which is never a good look. He did have the win over Bruno Silva by split decision. I don't think he won that fight, and they got knocked out by Alex Perez before that. He was getting hurt by Lonier Kavanaugh, kind of picked apart before he turned up the pace and caught him, and then lost to Ramos on Tamira before that. So not a lot of momentum for Charles Johnson. He doesn't have the most power on the feet. I mean, he's got good placement, good timing, good accuracy, so he can find guys' chin from weird angles. He's got good timing, like I said, decent wrestling, all around very good athlete, and I think that'll be enough to get by Eduardo Henrique, especially on short notice. Has the experience advantage, very well rounded. He's faced more highly touted, better guys, in my opinion, and definitely a rough night out on like a week's notice in your UFC debut. Charles Johnson, who's got something to prove, looking to get back in there, get a win, just fought the end of June, hopping right back in there, gonna have, you know, as close to a full camp as you can. He's saying super active, which is another good thing. So gonna go Charles Johnson. I think he'll get this one done over the debutant. Moving on, probably one of the hardest fights for me to pick. Joel Alvarez versus Chidi Njokuani. So Chidi Njokuani, always dangerous, very high level on the feet, jiu-jitsu black belt, kind of struggles on the wrestling at times, but he's 6'3", 80-inch reach, taking on Joel Alvarez, who's also 6'3", with a 77-inch reach. Joel Alvarez, 33 years old, still in his prime. Chidi Njokuani, 37, on the kind of the other end of his prime, coming off of that loss to Carlos Leal, where he did take a lot of damage before that. Got rear naked choked by Jake Matthews, who's no slouch, so no shame in those losses. So this is a dangerous fight for both of these guys, and sometimes I wonder if Joel Alvarez's success was due to him being kind of a weight bully and down at a weight class at 155 pounds, where he was always very big, having to cut a lot of weight. And you look back at his wins haven't really aged that well. Vicente Luque during kind of Vicente Luque's 50-50 era, Drakkar Klose, Elvis Brenner, Mark Jacasey, like these aren't the most high level wins in the world. And he's coming in off of a loss over Yaroslav Almasov, who was able just to kind of get him down, smother him, and eventually get the submission. So that's not going to happen in this one. This one's going to take place on the feet. And I know that Joel Alvarez, he is very good on the feet. He's got a lot of weapons, kicks, long rangy attacks, good defense for the most part. He's only struggled really when he gets taken down. We saw that in the Arman Tsarukyan fight, obviously his last fight against Yaroslav Almasov, and taking on something like Chidi Njokuani. And so the question is, does Joel Alvarez's striking success translate up a weight class? Now that he's facing guys that are roughly his same size, is he going to have the same level of success? And taking on somebody like Chidi Njokuani, who again isn't going to be shooting takedowns by any means, it's going to take place on the feet. I think it's a lot closer than the odds are giving it. They're saying Joel Alvarez minus 225. I think those should be closer, but I am going to go with Joel Alvarez. I like his stand-up. I like his fight IQ. I like the fact that he is moving up to 170. I feel like he was kind of killing himself down at 155. So who's to say that we won't see an even better, improved version of Joel Alvarez, especially on the feet, knowing that this one's not going to be a wrestling fest. But I also think that he can lean on the grappling if needed, work in the clinch. He's going to be the younger guy. Chidi Njokuani, not a lot of momentum going this one, but I think this one could go either way. I could see Chidi Njokuani beating up his legs, fighting him at range, being the longer guy, just hitting him and moving, defending the takedowns and winning a decision. But I'm going to lean Joel Alvarez to get this one done. I think that he can outpoint him on the feet, mix in the grappling, work in the clinch, look for some snap downs, some front choke series, things like that. But I'm going to lean Joel Alvarez, but I think that this one could go either way. Moving on to the main card, we got Edson Barboza versus Esteban Ribovics. So Ribovics recently fought Mateusz Gamrot, couldn't get anything really going on the feet, struggled to get his striking game going against the pressure and wrestling ability of Mateusz Gamrot. Got subbed in round 2. Before that, beat Elvis Brenner, which again, don't really know how great of a win that is. I think that he won against Nasrat Haqparast in his fight before that, then beat Zell Huber, knocked out Terrence McKinney. So Esteban Ribovics, very dangerous on the feet, very well-rounded, no shame in getting taken down and controlled by somebody like Gamrot. That's not going to be the case in this one against Edson Barboza. All he's got to worry about is the kick game for the most part. The spinning attacks, the leg kicks, things like that. Edson Barboza never been the biggest power puncher in the world. He's usually been beating up guys' legs, mixing the strikes as well. So I think that Esteban Ribovics, if he can negate the kicking game of Edson Barboza and start to roll downhill on him like the way that I think he will, I think he'll get this one done. Edson Barboza just taking tons of damage as of late. He's 40 years old. This isn't the prime prime 26, 28-year-old Edson Barboza who's throwing spinning attacks and, putting guys out cold anymore. This is a very muted version of the Edson Barboza that we all know and loved. And he's recently coming off of a TKO to Gillian Turner, lost to Jakar Close, Lerone Murphy. Not a lot of momentum heading into this one. Hasn't been the most active guy either. And taking on a young, hungry guy like Ribovics, who's got a good chin, who's got good fight IQ. He's athletic. He's well-rounded. I think he'll be able to put together a pretty good game plan to get in close to Edson Barboza, avoid the leg kicks, or check him at least enough to start putting pause and pressure on Edson Barboza. That's the thing about Ribovics, is he can put a lot of volume out there. Good chin, a lot of volume, good cardio. I think that he's eventually going to overwhelm Barboza and get him out of there by TKO. So I'm going to go with Ribovics to get this one done by TKO. Minus 400 favorite. I think those odds are justified. Moving on, we've got Mansour Abdul-Malik versus Dustin Stoltzfus. So Dustin Stoltzfus, always been a fan of the dude. Tough dude. He's gritty, good grappling, decent striking for the most part. He's fought some really tough guys. Lost to Kelvin Gastelum, Nursultan Ruzaboev, got TKO by Bruno Ferreira, dislocated Joe Piper's elbow back in the day, but hasn't had the most success, but he's not fighting, bad competition. Abus Magomedov, Bruno Ferreira, Nursultan Ruzaboev. No shame in a lot of these losses, but I just don't think that he has the skill set to really stay and maintain his spot in the UFC and really be anything, as kind of awful as that sounds. And taking on somebody like Mansour Abdul-Malik, I don't think that he has the offensive wrestling and grappling threat to keep somebody like Malik off of him, because Malik was a college wrestler. I think he wrestled at like 285. Now he's fighting at middleweight, but I think he used to wrestle at heavyweight. And so he's a monster of a guy, super athletic. I think he's going to be able to get his own takedowns or defend the takedowns from Stoltzfus, and I think that's going to be a bad night out for Stoltzfus on the feet, because Mansour Abdul-Malik, even though he didn't look the greatest against Yusri Belgary his last time out, Belgary's a problem. I think he's got a really bright future in the UFC, especially considering he's been able to work on his takedown defense to complement his high-level kickboxing. And so there's no shame in that loss to Belgary. I don't like how it was just back in March, because he did take a lot of damage. It was like a slow beat down to a TKO, but I don't think Mansour Abdul-Malik is going to be in any real danger of getting chinned or really hurt from Dustin Stoltzfus, and I think he's going to be the one pushing forward, keeping Dustin on the back foot, not allowing him to set up his takedowns, and I think he's going to be landing the more devastating shots. So I'm going to go with Mansour Abdul-Malik. I think that he's good. I think that a loss to Yusri Belgary, especially at this point in his career, only 28 years old, barely even into his prime, and then he's taking on something like Dustin Stoltzfus, who can be chinned, he can be hurt, he can be beat, 34 years old, taking some damage. I just don't think that he has the skills to threaten Mansour enough to keep him off of him and to avoid the TKO. So I'm going to go with Malik to get this one done by TKO. Moving on, we got another matchup here that is very close. Gillian Turner versus Kaue Fernandez. I think Kaue Fernandez is being underrated in this one. He's got a lot of momentum, lost a split decision to Mark Jacasey in his UFC debut, but since then beat Muhammad Yahya, whatever, but then just beat up Guru Nkutaladze on the feet, beat up his legs as a very big underdog, and then got the leg kick TKO against Harry Hardwick. And he's taking on Gillian Turner, who's going to be the bigger guy. He's going to be, I think, 6 inches taller. He's 6'3", 75-inch reach to 5'9". Kaue Fernandez, 73-inch reach. So he's going to be 6 inches taller. He's only going to have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. But you got to think Gillian Turner is susceptible to leg kicks. With that frame comes very little muscle and meat on the legs, and Kaue Fernandez has some of the most devastating leg kicks in all of the UFC. And I think that he's going to be a major problem for Gillian Turner in terms of his leg kicks, his grappling as well. Kaue Fernandez has a really good ground game, and he's very good defensively. I think he does a really good job with his defense, threatening guys, making guys kind of cautious to really step into the pocket with him, just because he can throw hands and he can land leg kicks. And I like Kaue Fernandez in this one. I think that he's very good striker, very well-rounded. He's got good experience. And Gillian Turner, he can be TKO'd, he can be out-wrestled. Recently got beat by Ignacio Bahamondes. Renato Moicano took him down, ground and pounded him, losing to Dan Hooker. House Gamrot, he did a really good job defending takedowns and landing damage, although he still did lose that fight. You can argue he won, and even though he is coming off of a win, it was over Edson Barboza. So if you look back at his career, he's 1-4 since 2023, and I just don't think he deserves to be a minus 170 favorite. I think this should be much closer to evens, and at this point I trust Kaue Fernandez's ceiling. I think that he can stay safe, beat up the legs, eventually take over with the hands, maybe mix in the grappling as well. So I'm gonna go with Kaue Fernandez to get this one done as a plus 140 dog. Moving on to the co-main event, you got Mackenzie Dern versus Gillian Robertson. I looked at these odds and I thought it was absolutely crazy that Mackenzie Dern is minus 235. I think that she's going to run through Gillian Robertson. Gillian Robertson, she's just a grappler. If you keep her on the feet, she's a victim there. And Mackenzie Dern, I'm not saying she's the most technical person in the world on the feet, but she's a scrapper. She's willing to stand in the pocket. She's going to throw bombs. She's looking to take your head off. She's willing to eat one to give one, and she's got a pretty good chin as well. And she can do that because she can lean on her grappling. She can lean on her wrestling. She's not afraid for you to shoot. She would actually prefer for you to shoot. And if Gillian Robertson does that, I think that Mackenzie Dern is the better grappler as well. So I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern. More experience, fought the better competition, had more 5-round fights. I think she's a better grappler. I think she's got more power in the hands. I think she's more willing to take a shot and take damage and sustain damage to get the positions that she wants. And I think that she'll get this one done by TKO. I think that she will look to sprawl and brawl, keep this one on the feet, make Gillian Robertson very uncomfortable. I think she's going to start shooting panic takedowns. She's not going to get them. And I think that Mackenzie Dern's going to TKO her with her boxing. So I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern. A lot of people might be picking this one to go to a decision or to go to a submission because both ladies are high-level grapplers, but I think Dern's going to TKO her and get it done. Moving on, you got Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry. So this is an interesting matchup. I actually haven't even looked at the odds in this one yet. I imagine Islam Makhachev is probably a minus 300-ish favorite. Minus 340, nailed it, which is probably about right. Ian Garry, high-level striker, good distance management, a lot of weapons, good tools, good cardio, can fight his game, make you fight his game, fights at range, has, you know, put guys out. He's got decent power, but for the most part, he is kind of just a volume point striker type of guy, and he is hard to get down. He comes from a judo base. We've seen him have success with his takedowns, like the MVP fight. We've seen him have somewhat good defense, but, you know, losing moments and grappling sequences against Shavkat Rakhmonov, which kind of caused him to lose the fight. And I just think in this one, Islam Makhachev is just better everywhere. He's obviously going to be the smaller guy, but from a damage perspective and landing the bigger, more damaging shots, the bigger ooh and ah shots for the crowd and for the judges, I think that's going to be coming from Islam Makhachev. And I think that if Islam's able to close the distance, which he will, I think he's going to be able to get his takedowns on Ian Garry. And if it does go to the ground, I think he's going to dominate him there. So I'm going to go with Islam Makhachev. I can see Ian Garry having some success. Maybe the first, second round he's landing, maybe he's squeaking out a round here and there just on damage and kind of beating up the legs. But I can see Islam Makhachev eventually beating up his legs, causing his movement, his ability to spring back and forth and move along the cage. I think that Islam's eventually going to start to kind of sap that ability from him. And I can see Islam just with his high fight IQ and just him being a danger everywhere. I think that he'll also be able to cut the cage off, eventually get a hold of him and get him to the ground. So this could be interesting. If Islam can't cut him off and they're stuck on the feet, Garry has a chance of just kind of outpointing him to a lackluster, boring fight on the feet. I don't think that this is really going to ever get into a barn burner, slobber knocker on the feet, because if they do get into those moments where they're both throwing heat, I think Islam's going to be shooting under and having success there. So Gary's got to fight a perfect fight. He's got to fight at range, not stand in front of him, not engage with his feet flat and allowing Islam to slip underneath him and get him, because we've seen Garry on the ground before. It's not like he's some immaculate guy when he gets to the ground. He's really just a judo guy. So if you get him to the ground, not a lot there. He's definitely not going to be the jiu-jitsu Sambo guy of Islam. So I think if he does get to the ground, it's going to be pretty easy work for Islam Makhachev. So going to go with Islam Makhachev. I think he'll get this one done by submission, second or third round. So if you guys are still here, appreciate you watching, appreciate the support and everything I'm getting from you guys. Just hit 4,000 subs, which is awesome. Started this channel in October 2024, so not even 2 years in, I'm at 4,000 subs. This is a really good card, stacked card. It's going to be a lot of fun, should be a lot of good scraps. So let's enjoy the fights. Thanks.